available on Android, iOS, Windows, and Amazon. You can download it by clicking the link in the description. And as the name suggests, you will be training and fighting dragons. This is how you make them feel more powerful. It's kind of like having your own dragon stable. You take 2 dragons, breed them, and then these guys are basically going to let you do the parenting, which means you now hatch and feed this guy and basically make sure it's alive. You will later train this dude by throwing it in the arena to battle it out against other dragons to make them more powerful. Just make sure you don't use the same methodology with your babies, if or when you have them. Here you don't just play against the AI, you play against real people. Just pull up to the arena with one of the 1,000 different dragons to choose from, crush your opponents, and build your own dragon empire. You can even find many YouTubers reincarnated into dragons, like The Boys, Fundy, Dream, Wisp, and many others. So if you are ready to build your dragon army, click on the link in the description and get a massive boost. 15,000 food to feed your dragon, 30,000 gold, and the very rare space-being dragon. The link is down there, so don't forget to click on it. And a big thanks to Dragon City for sponsoring this video. To get us fully prepared to enter the analysis platform, let's quickly run over both of these Titan builds. Titanus Radeon is a well-known winged Titan who is portrayed in the Monsterverse with many of the anatomical features as a pteranodon, except this Titan is biovolcanic, meaning that its anatomy shares the same attributes as volcanoes. Molten rock flows through its interior, meaning that its musculature is made from fibers that are especially adapted to withstand high heat. Radeon measures 154 feet in height, though it is important to notice that this is a slouched height, meaning that if this Titan decides to stand more upright, it could gain another 70 feet or more in height. This measurement is nothing compared to its 871-foot wingspan, with enough surface area to displace enough air and maximize forward thrust, which is good since this Titan weighs a whopping 39,000 tons. The male Muto is a very different Titan, known to measure more than 200 feet in height while standing and carrying a wingspan of approximately 350 feet. But in the film, we see that these wings can actually be spread in a wider pose, bringing this figure closer to around 450. Do not let this slender build fool you, as it is estimated that this creature can be anywhere between 16 and 20,000 tons. Although this Muto looks very insect-like, it's confirmed by the visual effects artist that the Mutos would classify as mammals because they have flesh, bones, and muscles. This doesn't necessarily make them mammals or insects, but most likely a whole new class of creatures. By placing these animals next to each other on land, the Muto has an advantage on height, but in the air, Radeon seemingly doubles the Muto in wingspan surface area. But will this even matter in the upcoming battle? Let's now enter the analysis platform. Durability. Given that Radeon is built like a pteranodon, we can assume that its skeletal build is quite...
Hello? Hello? Yeah? Hi. Yes. No, but I need a ride home. Same person. They're all neighbors. Probably.
How was your day today?
Good.
Like, get home before you leave. I just had to stop with your windshield wiper. My windshield wiper rubber like shredded.
Here too. It's drying up here though.
It's what, okay?
That's not what I said. I said same. It's same with that here too. It's drying up now.
Oh, but it's drying up now. Okay. And it stopped raining. Like, windshield wipers. I think I'm out of picture. Very full. But, wait, cheese. Real fish sandwich. And what did you eat today?
So lot cheese, beef, and fruit, and that's basically it. I had brunch, not breakfast or lunch.
I can't hear you well.
I didn't have breakfast or lunch. I had brunch.
What's that?
Huh?
What did you eat? What did you do between 9 and 1?
Eat. That's when brunch is. I ate at 10.
You eat at 10?
Yes.
But you said you ate at 1.
No.
The speaker.
I said I didn't have a specific one. I didn't have breakfast or lunch. I had brunch, not a specific one of the two.
And then you said, when did you eat? And I thought you said at 1.
No.
What's the last time you took the dogs out?
Like hour or two ago.
Did they get a decent walk today?
Not really. It's
Or
been
was the mess up because it was raining?
yes. I'm taking
Can you
them
walk them?
back out soon. I plan to.
Yeah, take them for a good walk before you go.
I know.
They'll be to your house at 4:30 to pick you up?
Yes.
Oh, well, why don't I just take you then so they don't have to come all the way your way? I'll be home by then.
Okay.
Yeah, just tell them that you can meet them there.
Okay. We might get ice cream first. I don't know. That's the plan.
Where?
I don't know.
Can you text them, say I'll be home and I can drive you?
I mean, I guess. Is there anything else?
I annoying you?
No.
Because I missed you.
Missed you too.
I wish I had been without you.
Hmm.
That was not very exciting.
IKEA was very underwhelming when I went.
It was very on what?
Underwhelming.
It was a lot more fun when you were little and you could play in the playroom and you liked the food. But you liked some of the gourmet foods, like the chocolate and stuff, but I couldn't find it in this one.
Yeah.
So, alright, well, I will be home in an hour. And so just find out where to meet and I will bring you a meet up about and then come and get you later.
Okay.
Alright, love you, bye.
Bye.
Similar in some areas. This light skeletal build was actually pretty durable, as it was able to withstand a 141,000. Ton Titan crashing into its skeletal frame. In addition to that, Radeon is said to be covered with an outer dermis made out of special volcanic sediment collected from centuries of hibernation inside a volcano. As the volcanic attributes made their way into this Titan's DNA, Radeon developed an immunity to extremely high temperatures, superheated weaponry, and as a result, modern-day weaponry such as missiles. Perhaps the most interesting durability attribute is its muscular viability. To explain this, we need to look at how Mothra successfully defeated Rodan by impaling him on the shoulder. This exit wound was closer to Rodan's back. At the end of King of the Monsters, Rodan was flying effortlessly once again. This ability to continue using these muscles is thanks to its biovolcanic anatomy. Its internal combustion system serves as an all-time source of radiation, allowing it to continue functioning even if the wounds aren't completely healed. How does the Muto compare? If this creature does have any insect-like attributes, it would be its chitinous exoskeleton, providing some protection against lighter attacks or impacts. But its most important virtue is its ability to withstand extremely high temperatures. In the film titled Godzilla, we see that Mutos were able to withstand Godzilla's atomic breath. Admittedly, this was a weaker blast than Godzilla's normal atomic breath. More on that later. This was a rather thin sheet of armor that enveloped the Muto. In contrast, Rodan's shock-resistant and thick armored build proves to be better suited for withstanding a heavy barrage of attacks, giving the edge to Rodan for overall durability. Intelligence. If you know anything about Monster vs. Rodan, you'll recall that this animal has been around for a while, possibly witnessing or partaking in battles with Godzilla, meaning that this kaiju has accumulated plenty of combat experience in the past. Another clue can be its close resemblance to modern-day birds, more specifically birds of prey, and based on its skull, crows and vultures. These animals have similar brain casings. In the real world, these creatures are some of the smartest on the planet, capable of solving complex puzzles, using tools, and possessing long-term memory. Rodan understands its corporal abilities and knows how to put them to good use. This was proved in 2019 when Rodan escaped from his enclosure. In this clip, Rodan knew the flames were retreating, so it used a barrel roll to turn this escape route into a kill zone. This barrel roll was probably already in its repertoire of battle maneuvers since it was executed flawlessly. Other examples include the knowledge of pinning its opponents and aiming for unprotected parts of its opponent's body. Mutos are not 100% instinctively driven creatures. They show signs of empathy towards others of their kind, especially their mates and offspring. These sort of behaviors are seen in animals with high levels of intelligence, capable of understanding abstract concepts such as revenge, guilt, and fault. See how this Muto identified the one person who destroyed her nest, and later remembered who it was. But what about battle intelligence? In combat, Mutos are team players, meaning that these pairs require each other to strategize and fight more effectively. But they can do fairly well on their own. That is, until they let emotions get in the way. Being highly sentient creatures, these animals are prone to being driven by obsession of revenge, radiation, or simply spite. This was proven as the Muto was distracted by its own obsession over this guy, while completely ignoring a giant kaiju behind her. And proven again as this Muto made a reckless attempt to attack Godzilla, which cost it its life. This may be due to their lack of experience, as these were relatively newly born hatchlings. Because of this, the edge of battle intelligence goes to a more experienced Rodan.
Super sweet dry cloth, scrap dust in here and lock it away. Better than the garage. Love it or your money back.
Why try Caprice Card? Caprice starts just right and stays just right for 40 days. Caprice Card. Overall strength. Titanus Rodan was a titan with a seemingly muscular build for a flying titan. Because of this, Rodan was capable of flapping its wings with so much force that it allowed it to gain enough momentum to soak in Ghidorah's aerial charge. These muscular arms or wings could also be folded to move through narrower shafts, such as the volcano that Rodan emerged from. A hard feat, especially given that this creature weighed 39,000 tons. But perhaps the strongest part of this titan was found here, on its talons. Unlike a pteranodon, these are a bit more pronounced and muscular, similar to a bird of prey. This strong grip would have allowed it to grip into any opponent. Combined with its large wings, it's safe to assume that this titan could have lifted heavy objects or inflicted a devastating shock. The male Muto, although smaller, has proved to be an extremely strong creature, probably one of the strongest for its size. This Titan was strong enough to carry a Russian Typhoon-class submarine from the depths of the sea and drag it many miles inland. How heavy are these? A Typhoon-class sub would weigh around 47,240 long tons, which is around 57,000. 600 US tons, almost triple the weight of the male Muto. But is this the limit? No! In this clip, we see the male Muto drag a 90,000-ton Godzilla while airborne, a difficult feat for a Titan of this size. This strength can be attributed to its appendages and wings, which are insect-like. In the real world, some insects are capable of carrying things many times their own weight. Mutos could have possessed similar muscular attributes, allowing them to drag very heavy objects. Seeing this, the male Muto's paranormal amounts of strength will now balance the scale, making this a draw for overall strength. Agility. Because this battle will happen in the air, the following attributes will be essential to this battle. Both of these Titans can fight while airborne, but who can do it better? Radeon is a Titan that can hit close and personal while fighting in the air. Its best virtue when it comes to agility, however, is being able to fight while upside down, flying backwards, or even spinning. Observe how Radeon crashes into the floor with Mothra, and is capable of becoming airborne once again in a split second. For a large winged creature, being able to move in such a manner, crash on the ground, and regain its composure is absolutely crucial for a winged Titan. Smaller size means that you can move faster within a small cubicle area. We see that this Muto managed to dodge Godzilla's attacks in less than a second, and immediately moved to this position to flank him. Similar to Radeon, this guy can also fly to the side, backwards, and roll to some extent. Compared side by side, however, these maneuvers were executed faster by one of these Titans. And by analyzing the speed of which these are executed, Radeon once again comes out on top when it comes to battle agility. Speed. This is the next essential attribute. Perhaps Radeon's best known talent is being able to fly at supersonic speeds, able to catch up to F-35s and Hornet fighter jets, and seemingly faster than the Argo. The fact that this guy can surpass the sound barrier means that wherever this guy goes, a sonic boom will follow. But why does it have to move so fast? Well, given that Radeon is a dense volcanic creature, moving at higher speeds is imperative to stay airborne. This animal can control its speed, flying slightly slower when it wants to. An advantage of moving at such speeds is also creating enough momentum to cause devastating damage to an opponent. The Muto can also move fast, but not Radeon fast. The fastest this guy can go is when it's plummeting through the air from a high altitude. But against Radeon, this is an unconventional way of attacking. The fact that Radeon can outspeed a male Muto while going in any trajectory gives him the edge in overall speed. Now let's get into the fun stuff. Fight's effectiveness. Unlike the past incarnations of this Titan, this Monsterverse rendition of Radeon does not have any real teeth, but it does have many serrations on its beak that allow them to inflict as much damage. Radeon does not necessarily bite like any other animal. Birds of prey with this pointed beak structure tend to rear their heads upwards and hack down on the victim, leveraging the sharp hooks on the tips for maximum piercing power. Once these hooks are in its victim, Radeon would simply close its mouth, ripping any flesh caught in those hooks. This isn't much of a bite, but rather constant pecking, which results in a brutal aftermath for an unprotected animal. Muto's got teeth too. These triangular-shaped teeth can pierce as long as a good bite is inflicted to put them to good use. There's a small problem though. Compared to Radeon's large head, The Muto cannot open its mouth wide enough to land a significant bite anywhere on Rodan's body. The only place where a bite would be damaging would be on the edge of these wings. But even then, this is hard to access, especially given that the Muto's neck really won't allow it to move its head as well as Rodan. But let's pretend that the Muto did land a bite. Any molten rock that manages to touch the insides of Muto's mouth will cause serious burns. We know this since the fleshiest
Non-power wash has 3 clean boosters not found in traditional dish soaps. It's more than soap, it's power wash.
sides of the Mutos cannot withstand high temperatures, making this weapon obsolete against Rodan, giving him the edge for fight effectiveness. Auxiliary weapons. As discussed before, Rodan's legs and talons resemble those of a bird of prey. These talons consist of 3 forward-facing claws, an opposable vestigial claw, and a spike on its ankle. In the real world, birds of prey require this arrangement of claws to effectively pierce and carry prey. Similarly, Rodan was able to do this to smaller craft, and most likely Ghidorah. Rodan also has claws on its hands which are attached to its wings, meaning that if these were to be used, Rodan is not necessarily flying or just fighting on the ground. These are used for grappling with an opponent at close range. An example of this can be found here, when Rodan was in hand-to-hand combat with Ghidorah. Both the female and male Mutos are equipped with hook-like claws that are used to hack and stab any opponents. These were so sharp that they were capable of stabbing into Godzilla during the events of 2014. These were capable of piercing deep past its thick skin and drawing blood. These hooks are powered by the strong muscles that allow the Muto to carry heavy objects. This amount of force would actually be enough to pierce a motionless Rodan. Both animals possess weapons that could potentially pierce their opponents. Rodan with 2 sets of armor-puncturing talons, and the Muto with a pair of deadly meat hooks, setting both of these titans at equilibrium when it comes to auxiliary weaponry. Special abilities. Monarch's super species profile categorizes Rodan as a destroyer, and his special abilities prove just that. In King of the Monsters, Rodan's wings cause disruption in the underlying air currents, creating gusts of wind so strong that they were capable of leveling anything right underneath them. This special ability is known as a cyclonic drift stream. Those wings are capable of doing much more. Given the hardened nature of these wings, slamming both of these against each other creates what is known as a thunderclap or sonic boom. The shockwave emitted by this will destroy anything in a spherical perimeter and disorient smaller titans. A final ability that we need to address is the assumption that Rodan can launch fire from its mouth. This is seen in cave painting depictions of Rodan, suggesting that it could at one point use this ability. But in 2019, we were unfortunate to not see this ability used in combat. So for this battle, Rodan will have to fight the Muto without it, as it isn't officially confirmed to be an ability of this specific Rodan. Mutos have an ability that isn't found in other Titan species: EMPs. These electromagnetic pulses are potent enough to shut down all electronics in a 5-mile wide radius. But that's not all. This EMP could also be strong enough to snuff out the devastating effects of Godzilla's atomic breath, which is why Godzilla's atomic blast looks weaker in 2014 than it did in 2019. But what can this do against Rodan? While it's true that EMPs do have a direct effect on flames or plasma, we must take into account that these pulses do not affect living organisms. As we can see here, this EMP was emitted with humans standing only meters away, and they remained relatively unharmed. Similarly, Rodan, along with its bionuclear build, would also remain unharmed. But he would most likely feel something. But because this EMP wouldn't have a fatal blow against this opponent, Rodan's thunderclap gives him the edge when it comes to special abilities. Now let's dig into the final attributes that could determine the outcome of this battle. X Factor. In King of the Monsters, Rodan is seen to be a Titan that puts himself in danger by underestimating his opponents. No matter how big or how small, Rodan has always been the type of Titan to enter recklessly into combat, forgetting about the opponent's abilities and weapons that could end the fight with one strike. But these never actually killed Rodan. Being a Titan who is composed of both rock and resistant fibers, getting pierced or struck by such weapons will only temporarily disable this monster. The Mutos were a class of organisms that evolved to effectively every weapon Godzilla possessed. The fact that these could stand their ground without fear against the most powerful Titan only means that this Muto will not think twice before engaging in combat against Rodan. We are now ready to reveal who will be the winner of this fight. Titanus Rodan, with its biovolcanic nature, wins the edge in durability, intelligence, agility, speed, fight effectiveness, and special abilities. Both Rodan and the Muto come equal in overall strength and auxiliary weapons, thanks to the Muto's paranormal amounts of strength and deadly meat hooks at the tips of its legs. By compiling all of our... okay then, as you can clearly see, this was probably the most unequilibrated fight in Goji Center's face-off series, for obvious reasons. By taking a look at each battle attribute, Rodan was dominant in the majority of these attributes, leaving none exclusive to the Muto. So what would this battle look like? This battle begins in the minds of these kaiju. As soon as Rodan detects and sees the Muto, its tendency to underestimate his opponent will be evident once again, simply because this particular Muto is much smaller in size. This will cause Rodan to fly towards the Muto at supersonic speeds and crash into him talons first. Since this battle is airborne, the Muto does not carry enough weight or speed to gain enough momentum to effectively counter Rodan's charge. But would he get impaled by Muto's hooks upon impact? Probably not. These would most likely snap upon engaging with Rodan's hardened body, slamming against it at high speeds. The problem with these is if they don't break, Rodan's tendency of being up close and personal in aerial battle will make these obsolete. These can be considered mid-range weapons. Once Rodan's body gets past the tips, these are no longer viable and incapable of inflicting any fatal injuries. If the Muto survives this impact, he would now have to fight in close combat against Rodan. And given that the Muto's neck does not allow it to move freely, the male Muto would now be at the mercy of Rodan. These sharp beak attacks would easily pierce the Muto just as easily as when it got impaled by this building. The Muto would get picked apart. See how this Muto's leg was chopped off by Godzilla's smaller dorsal plate. Similarly, Rodan's large sharp beak would hack off any of these limbs with ease. If this battle hits the floor, Rodan will be the first to get up, fly, and continue the fight. But what about that EMP? This pulse would not kill Rodan, as discussed previously. EMPs only damage objects that conduct electricity, but do have a direct effect on flames and sparks. But against a Titan with a nuclear internal combustion system, which is consistent of molten rock, Rodan would at least feel something. Nuisances like this have angered Rodan before, and this guy will do everything in his power to end the male Muto quickly, which he can. In this battle, Rodan underestimated the Muto, resorting to reckless methodology, and won. If this battle took place strictly on land, the Muto's height advantage would give him a slightly higher chance of winning. This was indeed an unfair battle, but what would happen if Rodan faced a more evenly matched foe, such as Kamazox? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks again to Dragon City for supporting the channel. So how about we all join?
Crest Q's advanced color changing toothpaste is the only toothpaste that changes color, so kids brush longer to conquer cavities.
Wow.
Hey!
Today in the battle arena, we will witness a battle for the ages. For the first time in this series, we will have not one, but two Godzillas in the battle arena. The first, a Titan that throughout the ages has earned the title of Alpha with Blood. A giant reptilian that does not know retreat or surrender. The one and only legendary Godzilla. Its opponent, one of the most terrifying monsters ever seen, with a biology so strange and volatile that it could counter just about anything thrown at him. This wasn't an ordinary Gojira. This is Shin Godzilla. In this battle analysis, we will go in depth, analyzing their weapons, armor, resistance, abilities, and biological attributes that will determine the winner of this battle. So make sure to stay with us to the end as we reveal which of these titans deserves the title of Deadliest Godzilla. Before we enter the analysis platform, it is imperative that we determine the physical proportions of these two monsters. Let's begin with Shin Godzilla. This particular version of Godzilla comes in many forms, constantly evolving into different forms that counter any the obstacles or oppressive elements that this kaiju would face. For this battle, we will be using Shin Godzilla's fourth form, known as Kamakura-san. This form measured 389 feet in height, more than 30 feet taller than legendary Godzilla in 2014, and weighed over 92,000 metric tons. A colossal kaiju of this size would have outsized the earlier 2014 rendition of legendary's Godzilla. Therefore, we will be using the larger, bulkier version of Godzilla featured in King of the Monsters. This time, legendary Godzilla measures a whopping 394 feet in height, just 5 feet taller than Shin. Additionally, this kaiju weighed 99,634 US tons. But what is this in metric tons? By converting these different units of measurement, we see that Shin Godzilla, although shorter in size, is actually the heavier kaiju. Proportionally speaking, however, these two are now almost the same. Now that we have a clear picture of how our contestants will be sized up for this simulation, let us now enter the analysis platform. Resistance. When it comes to the amount of damage that these kaiju can take, we need to take into account the types of weapons used to counter both of these creatures. Shin Godzilla brings a body covered in thick, aberrated hide, capable of withstanding a ton of firepower. In this scene, a whole squadron of Type 10 tanks, AH-64 Apaches, and 1Z copters rained a barrage of continuous fire on this creature. The result? Shin didn't even flinch. But how does legendary Godzilla react to this type of weaponry? In 2014, Godzilla was attacked by a barrage of fire, and as you can clearly see, legendary Koji actually does react to these sorts of weapons, in contrast to Shin, who didn't react. The only weapons capable of piercing Shin were the massive ordnance penetrators, which went right through Shin's dorsals, causing him to bleed and roar in immense pain, meaning that this particular area of Shin is vulnerable to damage. But there are a few other factors we need to consider. If you have seen Godzilla King of the Monsters, you will recall the scene where Ghidorah picked up Godzilla and dropped him from the stratosphere. Upon further research, we found two very important things. One, upon re-entry to the lower levels of the atmosphere, this temperature can reach 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And two, note that Godzilla landed on his dorsals. Upon landing, we can see that none of these dorsals broke, meaning that unlike Shin, these can withstand immense amounts of shock damage. Furthermore, we witnessed Godzilla take a nuke to the face. In the film featuring Shin Godzilla, this is the type of weapon with a blast strong enough to kill Shin. Or that's what they thought, at least. Legendary Godzilla's resistance is admittedly a bit strange. For a titan that can withstand nukes, it is only reasonable for this thing to have a thick hide that's capable of withstanding any type of trauma. But this is negated thanks to the Mutos penetrating Godzilla's skin and Kong's axe penetrating his thigh. But in this particular battle, both titans will need armor capable of withstanding atomic weaponry, atomic shocks, and high levels of heat. And by considering all of the evidence, we find that legendary Godzilla checks most of these boxes, giving him the edge in resistance.
So the legend prevents streaks of heat better than a bomb. Love it or you might not.
Regeneration. Because this battle will feature damage unlike any other battle seen in this channel, we must take into account the regenerative pace of these two kaiju. Shin Godzilla possesses the capability to heal relatively quickly. The prime example of this is the moment when the ordnance penetrators managed to injure Godzilla. Upon further observation, Shin managed to recover almost instantly, and on top of that, deploy a weapon right where the injury was inflicted. This was thanks to its genetic composition that allowed it to regenerate this fast. More on this later. Legendary Godzilla also has regenerative capabilities, but they behave a little differently. Unlike its opponent, legendary Goji's regeneration and healing is much slower and doesn't happen immediately. On the contrary, this process of healing injured areas can take anywhere from a few hours to even years, depending on the type of wound and where. Once injured by the axe, Godzilla is seen with an orange scab-like cover where the wound was originally inflicted. But another injury that Godzilla could have taken a while to recuperate from was its dorsals. Upon getting them destroyed by the Muto Prime's sonic roar, these would have taken a while to regenerate fully. Both of these titans can heal over time, but in a 1v1 situation, healing on the spot is imperative. Not to mention that Shin evolves while it heals, bringing back a superior organ better equipped to counter the weapon that inflicted the damage. For this reason, the edge for regeneration will go to Shin Godzilla. Battle intelligence. Those of you who have seen both of these creatures in action will know that these two behave very differently. Throughout its film, Shin Godzilla has been seen as an animal that behaves on pure instinct. At times, this creature showed absolutely no signs of thought processing. But what about its fourth form? This creature's way of fighting wasn't led too much by actual thought processes, but by reactions to the surrounding elements, and it was pretty effective. To illustrate this, we need to see how this creature behaved during its evolution. Once it found it difficult to breathe, this thing adopted a more terrestrial method of inhaling. If it found it difficult to move through objects, this thing now developed legs. Once airborne objects were the next big threat, this thing countered with weapons that could counter them effectively. The point is, although this creature's brain does have something to do with the way it evolves, its fight methodology is determined by what the opponent does, or what the obstacles are. A cause and response sort of paradigm. Not much critical thinking. Legendary Godzilla is practically the complete opposite. Instead of relying on its evolutionary traits for survival, this titan relies on its cunning and, most importantly, its battle experience. Allow us to remind you that Legendary Godzilla has been alive for millions of years, and in the world of Monster vs. Titans, living this long means that you have survived many battles and wars against many different types of foes, adding to Godzilla's repertoire of combat methodologies. We'd like to think that Godzilla's mind processes are led by an instinctive compass, a hardwired personality backed up by its critical thinking abilities that allow it to develop strategies and counters to any incoming attacks. Examples of this were shown with how he managed to kill both male and female Mutos in different ways, aiming for Ghidorah's most vulnerable body parts and the ability to outmatch Kong in a purely physical confrontation. By taking all of this into account, it's clear that in this particular battle, the edge for intelligence during combat will go to Legendary Godzilla. Overall strength. Most incarnations of Godzillas are usually represented as unstoppable forces of nature. But what about these two? In its live-action appearance, Shin Godzilla was the type of kaiju that would literally burst through all sorts of urban landscapes, densely packed buildings, and power through missile fire. But where is all this strength concentrated? Upon further observation, it's clear that most of its muscular density can be found in the lower portion of